What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by two special guests, Justin Lorber, a.k.a. Future Dodgers, and Bruce Kuntz, new friend of the show, here to talk all things Dodgers prospect. The trade deadline is behind us. Justin's got a midseason prospect update out. Bruce is working on his, so I figured this would be a fun time to have this conversation. So, Justin, Bruce, I appreciate both of you being here. Let's just dive right in. I want to start, Justin, with the prospect list that you just came up with. I'll throw it up on the screen for those watching on YouTube. These are the top 15 you've got: DePaula, Rushing, Ryan, Joendry Vargas, Quintero, Freeland, Ferris, Robleski, Hope, Morales, kind of the top 10. And then you've got Frisaro, Hurt, Lindsay, Cartaya, Hubeck. We're going to get into a bunch of these guys, but I'm actually going to go to Bruce first. When you look at this list, Bruce, as you're working on your own, I'm curious, anything that jumps out to you, maybe that you agree with, a stand Justin took that you agree with, or something that a guy that's maybe too high or too low in your estimation?
I was just telling Justin before we started the show, my list is still in the making stages, so nothing's final, but we are very similar in a lot of our lists. I know when I pulled up this list, when he first released it, I was looking at it, and there's a lot of similarities. Our lists and our thoughts with a lot of these guys, I think, are pretty similar. And so, yeah, I agree with most of what is up here. And a lot of these guys, even if they're not exact, they're within a couple of spots of where I've got them right now as well.
Love it. Well, Justin, let me start at the top, because you have a change. You had Dalton Rushing 1 and DePaula 2 at the beginning of the season. What caused you to flip these two guys?
Yeah, I still think it's 1A and 1B, similar scenario. It's just the flipping of 1A and to 1B and vice versa. And it's Dalton Rushing has only improved, so this is not he did not perform. It's much more so, I think, the upside with Josue DePaula, the bat to ball skills combined with the raw power. He might play a corner outfield spot. Doesn't matter. He looks like a really impactful offensive player. And so I think the upside of DePaula, for me, kind of tilted it just a little bit more in his favor. But you could put either one at the top, and I think totally reasonable.
Bruce, Justin and I have had conversations kind of going back to the trade deadline, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it feels like DePaula, Rushing, and Ryan are going to be 1, 2, and 3 on just about everybody's list. I know you're still in progress. I don't know if you start at the back and work your way towards number 1, or if you start at number 1 and work your way back. But what order, if you had to guess today, do you think you might have those 3 guys on your list?
Yeah, right now I've got them in the same order that's up on the screen right now. We did the same thing with Rushing number 1 preseason, DePaula number 2 preseason, and feeling like that even then it was really a 1A, 1B situation with those 2 guys being level above everybody else in the system. And now I think I've got a similar kind of reasoning behind DePaula being number 1. He's shown upside this year that he has shown his whole pro career, but really taking it to the next level in single A this year with the power production, and with that power really starting to show through in games, and the expectation that more and more will come along with the plate discipline and the ability to get on base that he's shown. I think that the offensive profile and the offensive ceiling is just too high to not have number 1. But like Justin just said, Dalton Rushing has done nothing wrong, and he's continued to progress in every way, not only offensively, but I've been impressed with what he's done behind the plate as well. So I think both those guys have really improved their stocks overall to where before the season, I think they were both fringe top 100 guys for a lot of different lists. And now I think that they are probably top 50 guys on any list that I would consider to make a lot of sense.
I love it. I love it. Let's go to 4 through 6. Again, I'm using Justin's list as a launch point. Joendry Vargas, Eduardo Quintero, and Alex Freeland. Now, these are 3 names, Justin, that if people have been just sort of casually following the Dodgers system, kind of looking at preseason lists and then moving on, they might not recognize these 3 names. A, because Vargas and Quintero are both 18-year-old kids. And then Freeland, on your list at least, was 41st coming into the season. So we got an 18-year-old shortstop in Vargas, an 18-year-old outfielder in Quintero, and a shortstop in Freeland, who is skyrocketing up the rankings on just about every list, by the way, that I've seen. So talk to me, Justin, about those 3 guys, and then we'll get Bruce's thoughts as well.
Yeah, I'll start with the back with Freeland. Was a pretty notable prep player coming out of high school in Florida, went to UCF, Central Florida, for 2 years, was a draft-eligible sophomore, taken in the third round of the 2022 draft by the Dodgers. I think he signed for maybe a little bit over slot. First, year and a half, 2 years in the organization, not like a whole lot to speak of. Didn't break out, wasn't doing terribly, just wasn't a ton there. Started this year, he goes back to high A, over 200 weighted runs traded plus in like 23 games, walking, I think, like almost 2 times more than he was striking out. Very early promotion up to Double-A, where he's only continued the production. The power has been there. He's quick on the base pass. He has already 20 stolen bases. That's just at Double-A, not even combined. He can play shortstop defensively, which I think, there's a lot of prospects who are quote unquote shortstops or listed as shortstops. They are not all shortstops. A lot of them won't stay shortstops. For now, it looks like he is going to be able to stay a shortstop defensively. Will he win a Gold Glove? Probably not. But the ability to stay at shortstop defensively is another plus for him. With Vargas and Quintero, I think there might be a little bit of a bad taste in some fans' mouths for people who follow prospects with guys like Luis Rodriguez, Wilman Diaz, who were, pretty consensus top of their international free agent classes and didn't really pan out. And for those skeptical of guys like Vargas and Quintero because of those experiences, I would caution that, because Rodriguez and Diaz, though they were signed with a lot of hype, never had close to the minor league performance that these two, or Emo Morales, who's currently in the DSL, have had so far. All of those guys, you look at just about every level, below league average offensively. For these guys who, again, we're talking 1 year into their career, 2 years into their career, just in the complex leagues, they're younger than the league average. They've been killing it offensively, well above the league average offensive and weighted runs traded plus. And so there's just a ton of upside with these guys. They're super far away. Questionable, really, whether they would even get to like Rancho and Single A this year. I would guess probably not. Maybe there's a chance. Still, I think if you're talking about prospect value and you're a different team coming in wanting the Dodgers prospect, these two guys would absolutely be in the top 10. And of course, I have them in the top 5.
Bruce, I want to ask you about Freeland. When the Dodgers went and made a move for Tommy Edman, who has the capacity to play shortstop, even though it sounds like maybe center field will be his primary position this year at least, Tommy Edman has 1 more year of team control as well, which to me felt like, hey, at least we have some plan at shortstop next year, depending on what they do with Mookie Betts and Gavin Lux, et cetera, et cetera. Is Freeland the type of prospect that Dodger fans can start looking, maybe not at 2025, but at 2026 as a guy that has a decent chance to be on the opening day roster at shortstop for the Dodgers?
I think there's a long way to go until that point, and being an opening day shortstop in the major leagues is such a difficult thing to earn. So I would say that I'm not quite at the point where I'm ready to hand the keys to him quite yet. I think there's still a certain level of concerns with every prospect, and with him as well, with the meteoric rise. That said, I do think he's done an excellent job this year. He's risen all the way up into my top 10 as well. And he all around the game impacts the game in a lot of ways. The stolen bases, the power is shown this year, hitting from both sides of the plate, playing defense at shortstop. It's a very complete kind of profile. And so I think he'll play out the rest of the year in Double-A most likely. And if he continues to put up these numbers and then probably heads up to Triple-A next year, and if he can stick with these kind of this kind of production, then I think you kind of look over a little bit of a bigger sample size, more sustained kind of numbers like this, and you can feel a little bit more confident in that. For now, I'm a little bit more hesitant just because I think the big league shortstop spot is such an important one to fill that I think that the Dodgers are still going to be looking elsewhere and not, heading into this offseason or next year thinking that they're going to hold the spot for him. But yeah, he's an excellent player, and he's been very impressive this year. I want to definitely talk about Vargas and Quintero as well. Those two guys have just done everything they could do through the Dominican Summer League and now the ACL this year down there in Arizona. the numbers are great. Quintero, I think, is the one that has really been, I don't want to say surprising is necessarily the right word, but he's really risen his stock where it was a little bit less likely than Vargas. Vargas was the complete top signee. Everybody knew him. And Quintero was listed as a catcher heading into the DSL season last year. And then all of a sudden, here's this guy with plus or better speed playing center field and, hitting for contact like he does. So both those guys are in my top 10 as well. The ceiling with both of them is very high. And I am hoping that as the season goes on, now that the ACL year is done, since it was moved up a month this year, I'm hoping that one or both of them might get to go up to Rancho and get some experience before the end of the season. I'm especially looking at Quintero there because I think once Kendall George heads off to high A at some point, that might leave center field open down there in Rancho. And I think the contact skills that Quintero has shown should mean that he's ready for a little bit of a jump to finish off this year.
Bruce, I want to just piggyback on that real quick, not to embroil you in a debate that I feel like my social media account has been in the middle of on our show and just on Twitter when it comes to Dodgers prospects, which is there feels like there's a building narrative about the Dodgers' ability or maybe inability to develop hitting prospects. People point to Will Smith as the last guy who's made it up to the major leagues with the Dodgers and been successful. I feel like people sometimes conveniently leave out all of the guys they trade away who then like immediately become productive players at the major league level somewhere else, or the guys that they develop all the way up until high prospect status and then trade them away. So I'm just curious, and Justin and I have already talked about this. It's why I'm asking you. I'm curious where you stand. Like, do you feel like the Dodgers have a deficiency at developing hitters, or do you feel like it's maybe just circumstantial as far as how it's played out with where they've had openings and where guys have ended up getting moved to?
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like I'm coming off as a homer. This is, obviously with a lot of thought and watching all these guys, but I do not believe that there's anything to be worried about there. The Dodgers do both on pitching and hitting. They're as good as any organization in baseball in terms of development. And just because you can point to a couple of guys, Diego Cartaya might be one that I've seen a lot in my mentions that people try and blame and say that there's a whole organizational problem. I'd pump the brakes there just because I think that when the major league roster has been as stacked as it's been, you pointed, Jeff, to, Bush, Vargas, those kind of guys haven't really had the same kind of room that some of the Bellingers, Seagers had before. So I think that there's also the fact that when we talk about Vargas, Quintero, Morales, there's a whole crop of young guys. De Paula can be included there since he's still a teenager. There's a whole crop of young guys that are on their way up that very well could be the next wave of that kind of Dodger Rookie of the Year contender year after year kind of thing. So I think if everybody stays patient, remembers that they've got Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, so much talent at the major league level, they'll be okay. And then they can wait a couple of years and they can have another wave of the superb hitting talent that everybody will be wondering why they were ever questioning the Dodgers' ability to develop hitters.
Yeah, I think, Justin, I'm looking at your list. 6 of the top 10 right now are hitters. 7 of the top 14 are hitters. And so, obviously there's guys up there, Freeland, Rushing, maybe the guys that are the closest to potentially making an impact. And I know we've got a mailbag question about Rushing in a bit. So that's why I'm kind of skipping over him because I want to get your thoughts on that. Bruce, I'll stay with you. Let's talk pitching real quick. Obviously, River Ryan's number 3 on Justin's list. I think it was it Baseball America that had River Ryan like outside of their top 10 in the Dodgers organizational list? I don't know how that isn't a typo. They had him behind Landon Knack, I believe. So I'll leave that there. I think we all probably would say that's a little bit off. You've got Ryan number 3. Justin does. Ferris, obviously, as we're recording this, I believe it was yesterday or 2 days ago, 8 innings of no-hit baseball from him. Robleski's number 8 on this list. And then you've got a couple guys who have struggled with injuries, Nick Frisaro, Kyle Hurt, and then Peter Hubeck is kind of the last guy in Justin's top 15 on the pitching side, if I'm not missing anybody. So give me your thoughts, Bruce, on just kind of the state of, and maybe we set River Ryan to the side because he's up at the major league level and seems like he's going to be there for a while. The rest of these guys, who do you like the most out of maybe this next crop of guys behind River Ryan?
Yeah, aside from Ryan, I'll leave Landon Knack out of this group because I think those two guys are both major league ready starting pitchers. They're up there. Even Robleski is right on that edge. And I'll say I've got Robleski just a smidge ahead of Ferris still for the top left-handed pitcher in the system, just because I think Wroblewski has the command, the floor, the stuff to be a long-term starter, where I really don't think there's a lot of risk there anymore, and I certainly value that. But Ferris, man, we've seen the way that as he's gotten his feet, he's gotten settled in high A, and once he really let his shoulders down and got comfortable in the Dodger system, he's been lights out for the last couple of months down there in Great Lakes. So Ferris has a ton of talent. I think right now, looking back at that offseason trade, because we saw Zahir Hope is ranked number 9 for you, Justin. He's in my top 10 as well. Michael Busch has done great things in Chicago this year, and so I think the Cubs are loving how they did there, but I think the Dodgers have to be pretty happy at this point as well, because they got 2 top 10 prospects in the system and guys that could continue to rise until they're even higher than that. So I think Ferris has a ton of talent. Hubeck has been very good this year in high A as well. He went back to Great Lakes for the second year, and he's done a great job. I think Maddox Bruns, I was really happy to see he got activated yesterday, because he's been on the 60-day injured list, and it was kind of up in the air whether he seemed like he was going to get back, not knowing what his injury was. So I was really happy to see that he got activated and can hopefully continue to make something out of this season. When he's appeared, he's looked really good, and I think his strikeout stuff is still fantastic, where if they can hone in the command somehow, that's been the question with him since he was drafted, but if they can work on that, I think he's got the stuff to be right there in that left-handed pitching conversation of Wroblewski, Ferris, and then Bruns. Peyton Martin hasn't had as good of a year this year as he did last year. He's been getting hit a little bit more. The walks have suddenly been an issue where they weren't last year, so I think that there's been a little bit of caution there on him. He's dropped a little bit down my list as well, but not too far, because I think he's still got the stuff that he showed last year. The slider's impressive to me, and I think he's been working on a changeup too, that I still think that he could bounce back next year for sure. Really young still too. So yeah, this system has a ton of pitching talent. That's how it is year after year after year. You could go all the way down from the upper minor leagues all the way through rookie ball. Samuel Sanchez got promoted to single A today, and he's another guy that I'm really pumped about. 18-year-old who reaches the upper 90s already, despite not even standing 6 foot tall and having a lot of room to fill out the frame still. So there's just ridiculous pitching talent. That's how it has always been in the Dodger system. That's how it seems it will always be. And this is a good time to be excited about a lot of these guys.
And still somehow none of them got moved. Like, they traded all position players at the trade deadline. It's hilarious to me. Justin, I want to ask you about one guy in particular, and then if you have thoughts on any of those starters, go for it. Nick Frisaro. Frisaro was the top guy, the top arm on a lot of people's lists heading into the season. Obviously, a shoulder injury, I believe, was what he had, and that's never good. You've got him at number 11. I imagine this was one of those, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with him. He's been injured. He hasn't pitched. These other guys are pitching well. So what do we do with Nick Frisaro, a guy who, again, was ahead of River Ryan and ahead of all of these guys at the beginning of the season, but then is dealing with a pretty major injury?
Yeah, I think if you flash back 12 months ago, you take that Nick Frisaro and you want to put him in these rankings, he's easily in the top 5. And, you can go back and forth between him and River Ryan on the top pitching prospect in the system. The stuff is that good. Shoulder injuries are tough. Andy Pages has kind of put any shoulder injury doubters to shame with how he's done this year, but especially for pitchers, I'm pretty sure it's a torn labrum. Those are not necessarily easy surgeries to come back from. Now, no surgery is easy. Even Tommy John, as it's gotten a lot easier, isn't a guarantee. Shoulder injuries are not Tommy John. So I think, it is hard to place him, because from a talent perspective, I think if healthy, he does have a chance to start. I wonder though, with the injury, does he end up just getting moved to relief, which he still could do very well in. He's a guy who could easily slot into high leverage relief, fastball, slider, and the changeup, maybe even a multi-inning guy. The guy they keep trying to make Michael Grove into, which Jeff, I know you take issue with. Maybe Nick Frisaro.
It feels personal to me. It's I like Michael Grove. I want the best for him. It's you treat everybody else nicely except for Michael Grove. It feels like they're young pitchers. So yeah.
I'll bring up one other starter, and I know we're going to talk potential Rule 5 stuff. So I'll touch on him briefly. Ben Kasparius has been a guy who took a huge jump this year. has been up at AAA. I know moved up in my rankings into the organizational top 20. Mid-90s fastball, 3,000 plus RPM, sweeper, slider are the selling points. I'd say probably don't see him making his major league debut next year, but he's Rule 5 eligible for the first time of the offseason. Probably one of the more likely additions. Could be a debut guy next year.
Yeah. Okay, Bruce, let me jump to another name here. Justin and I talked draft. He's got Kellan Lindsay, their first round pick from this year, at number 13. Take this wherever you want as far as maybe just overall thoughts on the draft that the Dodgers just had and kind of your view on Lindsay in particular.
Yeah, I think they did a good job this draft. Lindsay, I've got him, I believe, right now at 14, so right in that same area as Justin. Big tools. I think we've seen them go back-to-back years now in that first round with big speed and then try and build the rest of the profile around that. With picking 23rd this year, that allowed them to get the big speed guy who has a lot more offensive upside with the power than Kendall George really has. I'm not sure, we might talk about Kendall George a little bit more later. But I like Lindsay. I like Chase Harlan, the third round pick that they took, and those two guys as prep bats at the top of the class. I think I'm happy with how they did there. A lot of upside with both of them. Harlan has the huge power potential that they'll hope to grow him into, and just turned 18, so real young, and to be flashing the exit velocity and power ability that he already has is certainly impressive. They went heavy on a lot of college arms in this draft, and I liked a lot of the guys that they took. Obviously, like as usual for the Dodgers, it was a lot of data-driven kind of guys that even if they didn't have results in college that certainly look the best on paper when you dive into the pitch shapes and all of that, there is a lot to like. One trend I noticed with a lot of those college arms that it seems like they took this year, that there's some of them that they'll certainly give a chance to start. But I think when you look at a lot of them, there's, one or maybe two pitches that really stand out in the profile and make it seem like that even if they don't wind up starting long-term, there is an easy pivot to the bullpen and they can still wind up being productive arms in the system. So I like those kind of guys that you're not necessarily putting all your eggs in one starting pitcher basket, and there's plenty of stuff there to shift to the bullpen if it doesn't work out. And if you fill a system with that, you're going to have a lot of arm talent for every single level all the way down.
Love it. Love it. We do have some questions to get to. I'll ask one more of my own before we get to some of these. Justin, I'll come to you first. Trade deadline. You mentioned in your piece, they were on Lorenzo, the catcher traded away for Jack Flaherty, would have been the number 4 prospect on your list. So right behind River Ryan and ahead of Vargas. You said Albertus and Perez would have been 17 and 19. Trey Sweeney would have been 23rd. Overall, your thoughts? I mean, I always joke with you that for prospect guys, the trade deadline must be brutal because it's all these guys that you're thinking about and spending time ranking that they're going out. Obviously, you guys are both Dodgers fans, so you appreciate the guys that are coming in like Jack Flaherty as well. But just big picture, your thoughts on the cost that it took to go get Jack Flaherty from the Dodgers system perspective.
I mean, relative to, I think, my expectations and to seeing what else happened in the market, I think you have to be really, really pleased, especially like looking at the Padres trade for Tanner Scott, looking at the Astros trade for Kikuchi. They gave up pretty big hauls, and that's kind of this new meta where a lot of these rental guys, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, like we saw with the Scherzer trade, prospect cost was really low. Now you look at kind of the way things have changed with more teams in the wild card hunt. There's more playoff teams. There are less sellers. Last 2 years, it's been a seller's market. That just kind of seems like the new normal. So to get Jack Flaherty for just Lorenzo and Sweeney felt kind of light, especially like I mentioned Kikuchi, who I think maybe somewhat subjectively, but mostly objectively less valuable than Flaherty. Flaherty was the top star.
I'll say it more clearly. Dramatically worse than Jack Flaherty.
Yeah.
You could like Kikuchi, and I don't know you could argue with that statement.
Yeah, Flaherty was the top starter on the market. Not sure how much that is in dispute. And I think the Astros paid more for Kikuchi than the Dodgers did for Flaherty. Yeah. So just that in and of itself, I think it's a pretty big win. I think the team got better. Maybe not like a big headline acquisition that some people were hoping for. Terrence Skubal didn't get moved. I don't think anyone's really expecting that. Garrett Crochet seemed like maybe didn't get moved. probably be something revisited in the offseason. The team got better. I think they got a lot of floor raisers, which, considering the bottom of their lineup the last month or so, and I know, guys have been hurt, floor raisers has been really what they've needed the last month.
Bruce, briefly, any issues with the Lorenzo guy? Is Lorenzo as the guy that gets moved out in a big trade?
No, I didn't mind it. If you were going to deal from the top crop of talent in this system, I think Lorenzo was probably the most expendable guy in that group. There's more risk with him than I think many of these other guys that we've already talked about, especially for having been in high A this year and being on the brink of reaching the upper minors. There's still a lot that I know over the last year or so have been a little bit more down on Lorenzo than some of the other outlets. So, take that with what you will, but I've had concerns with the end zone I've had concerns with whether he'd stick at catcher. And so I think with a guy with those kind of red flags, the raw power is huge. So he could go to Detroit, and if he figures everything out and starts making consistent contact all the time and sticks at catcher, he could be an absolute stud. But when you look at it right now and you see the red flags and potential drawbacks that his profile has, I think he's a guy that you can certainly stomach losing more than. I know when I saw Flaherty to the Dodgers, I was bracing for, an impact of potentially like Dalton Rushing going back or something like that. And you can certainly stomach Lorenzo and Sweeney being the return a lot more than that. Sweeney is another guy that I think when I have looked at him this year, he hasn't lit up the Pacific Coast League by any measure. He has not been the best down there. And I think when his defensive future is a little murky, I think he's going to be able to play maybe passable big league shortstop, but is certainly never going to be anything great. And I think he has more of a utility infielder kind of future. And so that's not a guy that you're going to really worry all that much about losing if you can get back a frontline starter that the Dodgers really needed right now.
Yeah, we were doing a live stream, and then immediately it's like, holy crap, Jack Flaherty's coming. Like, who do you think's going? I was like, well, it has to start with Rushing, right? Like, that was my immediate reaction. So it's like, oh no, it's actually their second best catching prospect is the headliner, and basically, the only guy in the top 20 that gets moved. So, all right, we've got 5 or 6 questions. We'll try and fire through these. I'd love to get both of your thoughts on all of these, but for the sake of time, I'm going to point them in one direction or the other, and when it's your turn, if you want to chime in on the previous question, I'm not going to tell you not to. But Justin, let's start with you. We got 2 questions from Kevin. You'll get the first one. Speaking of the trade deadline, David Vassay has reported that in negotiations for Garrett Crochet, Dalton Rushing was off limits. He says that's surprising considering Will Smith is around for the next decade. Do you think that highly of Rushing, and do you think there's any chance he debuts in the outfield at some point?
It is surprising that I think he was off limits, because I think if the White Sox called and said, okay, 1-for-1 Rushing for Crochet, the Dodgers would send in the trade, confirming it to the league office before the White Sox realized their mistake. And that's nothing against Dalton Rushing, but Garrett Crochet this year has been a top 10, top 15, top 20 starter in baseball, with still another 2 years of control. And I know the whole might not pitch in the playoff stuff. Still, Dalton Rushing is a prospect. He's not a, top 10 or 20 prospect in the game. You make that deal 10 times out of 10. Now, I think maybe it was Rushing in combination with other names that could have given the Dodgers hesitancy. I don't have any reporting on it. I'm just purely speculating. As for whether he makes his debut in the outfield, it's possible. I mean, his bat is good enough to where, and I tweeted this out a couple of days ago, it could get to the point where how do you get his bat in the lineup? Because Will Smith's a catcher, Ohtani's at DH, and he has played some first base. Freddie Freeman's at first base. If one of those guys is hurt or there's an opening, sure. But the bat might, get to a point where you want to get him in the lineup. So left field seems like the spot that you might throw him in. I know he's had a few starts there. I don't have any idea how he's played. Just knowing, his archetype as a player. I'd be surprised if he was a Gold Glove defensive left fielder. But if he's passable, that's huge. If he is a passable left fielder with his bat and the ability to play some catcher, that would really expand his profile. And of course, given who the Dodgers have at the major league level, it might make his rise to the majors that much quicker.
Bruce, I lied. I'm going to come to you on this one. I saw somebody comp like Kyle Schwarber here. Like, come on, just throw him out in left field and see what happens. I mean, do you think that's like realistically in play?
I was just going to mention that. That's Josh Thomas, my Dodgers Digest friend that he has tweeted a couple times now. Why can't we have our own Kyle Schwarber?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of look that Dalton Rushing has, certainly a light version with definitely differences. I think Rushing has the athleticism that Schwarber does not, where I think he could play a passable left field once he's given innings out there and everything like that. He doesn't have the power that Schwarber has, but he's got the on-base ability. And I think that Rushing certainly has the offensive profile that fits left field. One thing I think would be fun for him as a way to get him on the roster and to keep him as valuable as possible, as Austin Barnes eventually works his way out, I would be interested to see if the Dodgers would consider kind of a hybrid backup catcher situation where they've got Rushing on the roster, they've got Smith on the roster, and when Smith isn't catching, they throw Rushing back there, but Rushing plays left field when he's not catching. Something just like a new age kind of idea for how to deploy a backup catcher kind of thing like that. They've also got Hunter Fiducia that could go and take over Barnes' role at any time and do fine with that if they'd prefer to stick traditionally. But I think Rushing has the bat that is clear that it's going to have a major league future and he's going to be very good at the major league level. I think the Dodgers approaching trades this deadline with the idea of him being off the table says a lot about how they feel about him organizationally outside of his numbers, walk rate, all those things we can talk about. The Dodgers know him best, and for them to go to the table and say absolutely not, it speaks a lot to who he is off the field and as a player, as a performer, as preparation, all of that kind of stuff. He's certainly, we already said 1A, 1B with De Paula, and I'm really excited to see Rushing's future, hopefully with the Dodgers. And if they do go back to the trade market this offseason, it sounds like they would only ever deal him away for maybe not even Crochet. Maybe it would have to take Skubal or Luis Robert, something like that. But he's an extremely valuable player.
Love it. I'll stick with you, Bruce. Kevin's second question was about last year's draft. He says, Kendall George appears to be a middling prospect. His words, not mine. Geloff looks lost after going up a level. Is last year's draft on a downward trend, and how did we miss so badly?
I think we got to pump the brakes a little bit. Just, take a breath. Kendall George has an on-base percentage. It's somewhere around 390 in single A this year, and he's stolen, I believe he's already at 30 stolen bases. He's doing everything that he was expected to do. The expectation was never that he was going to get to single A and be a 800 plus OPS guy. They drafted him to play good defense in center field, to steal a lot of bags, and he has the on-base ability that is not always typical with guys who are more, don't have any power. Like he seems to not really have much power. He had his first professional home run earlier this year, and that's never going to be something that's part of his game. So for a guy who pitchers might not really be afraid to throw strikes to still work as many walks and to get on base as often as he does is really a good skill. So Kendall George is doing everything he needs to do right now. And I expect him to reach high A before the end of the year, probably. If not, it'll be opening day next year. So I am happy with where he's at right now. Geloff moving up to high A has certainly been a road bump. He started the year on fire in single A and was just excellent in Rancho Cucamonga, and that success was not sustained moving up to high A. I don't think that it's time to just sound the alarm and, sell your Geloff stocks right now, though. That bump from single A to high A is a really difficult one, and I think people lose that sometimes, that is a big step up in play, only second to the jump from high A to double A in terms of minor league promotions. And that's a tough thing to do. I think Geloff needs to be given time. He homered yesterday. I think he's starting to upswing a little bit. And once he's given time, he has the offensive tools to figure it out. And I still have faith that he will.
Love it. Love it. Justin, coming to you. This is from Legitimate Salvage. I love these names when I have to read them in a mailbag. It's fantastic. He says, who are the favorites to stick on the 40-man roster after the upcoming offseason and Rule 5 draft? Anybody you see being moved? So looking at the Rule 5 draft, your prospects, Kasparius, who we mentioned, is number 18 on your list. Austin Gauthier is 20th on your list. Those are the top two guys who are Rule 5 eligible this offseason. How do you see those two decisions playing out? Anybody else who might get protected in that Rule 5 draft?
Yes, I do want to add on one thing to the last answer from Bruce. Echoing similar sentiment, if you were to look at this time last year, the 2022 draft, you'd be like, well, Dalton Rushing's great, but Alex Freeland hasn't done anything yet. Flash forward a year later, obviously, he's one of the top prospects in the system. So patience is a useful skill, especially with prospect development.
Good word.
As for 40-man guys, so those are the two top first-time eligible players that I have. I also have Edgardo Henriquez in my organizational top 20, who was first-time eligible last offseason, when unprotected and unselected, will be eligible again this offseason. Coming back from Tommy John, he shifted to relief. He has taken that shift phenomenally. He already threw hard, upper 90s, touching triple digits as a starter before Tommy John. Now he's, occasionally sitting triple digits on some nights. He's moved all the way up to AA. I think he's the best pure relief prospect in the system. And guys who touch 103 with a pretty good breaking ball don't fall out of trees that often. So would not be surprised at all to see him protected, added to the 40-man. Those three, I think, would all be more likely than not. As for somewhere between maybe 10 and 49%, guys like Ryan Ward, Andre Lipschitz. Let me look at my list. Those are two guys, both at AAA, both.
Carlos Duran is another guy that's on your 30th on your list who was already Rule 5 eligible.
Yeah,
as well.
Carlos Duran. I'll throw in Damon Keith there too, who's another first-time eligible player. But if the Rule 5 draft were today, I'd say they protect Gauthier, Casparius, and Henriquez. The rest get left off with maybe one more of those guys getting thrown on.
I think Gauthier could be starting. The lineups they're trotting out right now, like, you want to talk utility guys, they have a guy down there that I think could be contributing. But anyways, the other part, and this could just be a rapid fire. I mean, obviously the 40-man crunch works both ways. The Rule 5 draft works both ways. Like, are there any guys that maybe are on the 40-man roster from a prospect perspective that you could see being moved? I mean, Justin, I'll come back to you. The obvious name here is, like, what do they do with Diego Cartaya, who's still sitting on the 40-man roster? I believe next year would be his last option year. So theoretically, they could keep him around and send it back down to Oklahoma City, where he has started to hit a little bit. But anybody on the 40-man roster or Rule 5 eligible that you think they might try and move kind of in the open space between now and then?
I don't know if there's anyone I think they'd move, but if you ask me to pick a name, probably Cartaya sticks out, just because we're getting to a little bit of a crunch point now where, like you said, his next year will be his third option year, his last option year. And he, at this point, he just got promoted to AAA, hasn't really hit there yet. Certainly his prospect status has taken a fall from where it once was. And now you also have a guy in Dalton Rushing right behind him who, where Cartaya was once considered, well, how are we going to get his bat in the lineup with Will Smith? Now people do that with Dalton Rushing. So it seems like the priority has also been shifted away from Cartaya. So we would be, like, quote unquote, selling low on Diego Cartaya, especially after the last 2 years, but also just recognizing the kind of 40-man crunch that could be upcoming with his spot.
Okay, well, I promised you guys 25 minutes. You both said you had nothing else to do after this, so I'm sort of taking you at your words because we're well beyond that and we've got more questions. But Bruce, I'll take that same question to you. Anything you would add to the 40-man conversation?
Yeah, I think that the three that Justin mentioned, and Gauthier, Casparius, and Henriquez are certain, I think, pretty much guarantees to go on. Casparius and Henriquez would be immediately taken because of their stuff. Casparius' slider, he could go into a bullpen tomorrow, I think, and he could find some success. And then Henriquez with the stuff, fastball has touched 104 this year. The slider has touched 96. As insane as that sounds, the stuff is just ridiculous. And so I think they need to hold on to him for sure as well. Justin, you brought up Damon Keith is a guy that I'm interested to see. I don't think he gets protected, but I'm interested to see if he gets taken if he doesn't get protected, because I think there's a lot to like there. I gave him a 70 double plus in raw power preseason, and I'm happy with sticking there. The dude crushes the ball when he makes contact, and contact was a struggle last year in high A, but he's done an excellent job in his first AA season this year, worked through an injury to do it as well. So Keith is a guy that has started to rise right back up boards after his tough year last year, and I definitely have my eye on him. So I think that is pretty much where the 40-man situation sounds. I'd be surprised to see them ship off Cartaya, but I do think he might have a little bit more value on the open market in trades and such than some people might think right now. Because with Cartaya, I kind of see him as his value and where he's valuable has kind of flipped. Because while his bat has really struggled these last 2 years, he has continued making strides and developing defensively, where I think I feel confident in him as a defensive catcher right now. I think he does a lot of good things well on that side of the ball, and that will always have value. A young catcher that teams see as a guy who can be a starter and stick at the position, that will always have value.
One guy you guys didn't mention as somebody being kept, but who we talked about actually right before coming on is Ryan Ward. I know he's 26 and a half years old. Like, and I agree. I don't think it makes sense, like in the context of this team and whatever. I said on our live show the other night, like the team they are trotting out right now, if you're not planning on protecting Ryan Ward in the Rule 5 draft anyways, just bring him up. Like, he has to be an upgrade offensively. And if he's not, then you'll know it and you'll figure it out, and you'll have 2 months of data on it, and you can DFA him, which is essentially what you're going to be doing by leaving him off of the Rule 5 protection list next year. So he's just one of these guys that I look at. It's same with Gauthier. It's like, you're going to be adding him at the end of the year anyways. Like, why is Kike Hernandez still taking at bats and hitting like 195, which unfortunately is, not too far off from his career averages. So anyways, I'll get off my soapbox.
I'd give a couple quick thoughts there if I can. With Ward, I think he's in the kind of shoes right now, the same thing as Ryan Noda was a couple years back now, where there just isn't a defensive home that makes a lot of sense. I have concerns about Ward, whether that slug, I don't see it replicating at the major league level as it is in the Pacific Coast League this year. He's been hitting bombs, and I don't mean to discredit the ability that he's shown. It's been impressive, but he's the kind of guy that the age, it just doesn't seem like that there's a clear future. Another guy that I think in this 40-man conversation, Jose Ramos, has pretty much fallen out of it. He's been right on the brink these last 2 years, and this year has been ugly in AA. So I just wanted to throw his name in there, because if people go back to read previous years, he's mentioned a whole lot, but I don't think that he's really a guy that's going to be considered a ton this year, despite he appeared a lot in spring training this year. He seemed to be a guy that they were spotlighting, but it has not gone well this season. So I don't think that he's really in the conversation much anymore.
Totally. And to be clear, my view on Ward is not all that different from yours. I'm just looking at it and saying, like, if that's what we think of him, and he's not going to be protected, and who knows? I mean, maybe other teams all view that the same way and say, we don't think he's going to stick. I just look at the guys they're trotting out there in the outfield and saying, like, I mean, at some point, let's just try something different. Might be better than just what we're staring at. So, all right, Justin, I'll come back to you. Miguel Vargas gets traded. I don't think anybody was surprised. Like, the day it happened, nobody was surprised that he got traded. I think if you had rewinded the tape 18 months, people would have been very surprised, because this is a guy that, just 2023, he's the opening day. He's on the opening day roster. He's got this long runway, etc. Like, how surprised are you by kind of how the last 18 months went for Miguel Vargas within the Dodgers organization, and sort of like, are you shocked that it didn't work out for him in LA?
I think, what we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years is, and, this kind of goes along with the conversation of are the Dodgers still good at producing hitters? It's tough to get into a spot and really hold it down. Even a guy like James Outman, who was the starting center fielder all last year, has spent a bunch of time at AAA this year, probably deservedly so, because he hasn't really hit well at the majors. But it's tough to hold a spot on this team nowadays. And I think, Miguel Vargas, like you said, got a long runway, really half the season last year before going down to AAA. And I think it's surprising, but the offensive impact wasn't there like you would have hoped. And then I think kind of in a theme of the trade deadline is defense matters. They go out, they get Tommy Edman, they get Kevin Kiermaier, and they trade away Miguel Vargas. I'm going to ignore the fact that they also acquired Ahmed Rosario for that purpose. But
the Dodgers are ignoring the fact that they acquired Ahmed Rosario too. So you're right in line.
Yeah. To me, that was one of the themes of the trade deadline is defense, for the Dodgers at least, is defense matters.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Bruce, any thoughts on Miguel Vargas?
Yeah, I think it was an unfortunate situation all around. He got hit by the pitch last year in spring training, and I think that really derailed a lot of stuff with his rookie year where he wasn't comfortable. That was obvious. And I think he had that comfortability back this year, the swagger that he was hitting with, taking to the plate. He looked like himself again, which was good to see. And he showed some good things at the major league level at the plate too. But looking around the infield, it's just crowded, and he played himself off the dirt anyway, and then he wasn't good enough in left field to give him the keys to that position and move Teoscar to right permanently. So I think it just kind of reached a point where I don't think they necessarily wanted to find a trade for him specifically. Like they went into the deadline saying, we got to get rid of this guy. Yeah. But I do think that he was certainly at a point where he was expendable. And if they found an upgrade, like I think they did with Edman and Kopech, I think that him being the big ticket in the package is something that they could certainly handle and be okay with and understand. Like this was just an unfortunate situation all around. And I think everybody, Justin and I, having watched him come to the system, and I think everybody in the Dodger organization is going to root for him to go to Chicago and find his way and start to thrive and turn into the guy that he was supposed to be.
Okay, 2 more questions. Bruce, the first one will come to you. Hyun-Suk Jong, teenager they signed out of Korea, I believe. He was playing in the ACL playoffs, had a fantastic performance in there. Again, emphasize he's playing in the ACL. He's playing in the Complex League. He's a teenager. But there are some people that are pretty excited. This is a question we got from Henry kind of specifically about him. So what are your thoughts on him and what the next few years might look like?
Yeah, he's a guy that I'm very excited about, and I think doesn't get talked about quite as much in prospect circles. I know he gets talked about a lot on Twitter. I see his name quite a bit in terms of, a guy who is a young pitcher who's never even reached single A. He gets talked about more in that sense than anybody, but I think he gets overlooked a little bit when you're talking about prospect lists and stuff like that. I've got him in the top 20 personally because I think when you look at his numbers in the Complex League this year, when you first pull it up, you'll see an ERA over 8, and you'll go, what? Why is everybody talking about this guy? But then you look at the strikeout numbers, and the strikeout numbers are huge. You understand that this is a guy who came over and is pitching professionally for the first time in a brand new country, all those kind of things. Not to say that that's a specific reason why he struggled with command, but command was not supposed to be a thing that was an issue for him. And then all of a sudden the walks were really bad in the Complex League this year. They had him on a very short leash, so it was not a big sample size. And that's something that I expect as he gets to single A, whether that's this year, next year, and extends himself out a little bit. I think the walks will get reined in naturally. So I think when you look at his results in the Complex League this year, the strikeouts are a huge positive, and you can just take that and be happy with it. His stuff is fantastic. He's got a deep arsenal. And I don't think the command is as bad as it looked like in the Complex League. So when you look at that, you look at the frame that he's got, 6'4", the fluidity in his windup, there's a ton to like. And I think he's a guy that could really fly up prospect boards once he gets going with a bigger workload and starts to really pitch without the training wheels on.
Justin, you've got him 21st, so just outside of your top 20. So it doesn't sound like you're all that far off from kind of the expectations, and the hope is maybe a better word. The hope that I hear at Bruce's voice talking about him.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he's a teenage pitcher. We know the volatility that comes with teenage pitchers who throw hard and are very impressive at a young age. But yeah, I think as far as upside goes, you can put him up there with just about anyone in this system of, if it all works out, what might this guy be as a starting pitcher? Not many guys in the system look like him.
Love it. Okay, last question, Justin. I'll let you go first on this one. Is just my own question. Guy outside the top 20 that maybe you personally, selfishly wanted to be inside the top 20. You wanted to place higher, but you just haven't seen the results yet, or you feel like it's 6 months too early to move him up. Who's kind of the guy that 6 months from now, you're doing your preseason list, might be 20 spots higher than he currently is right now?
So I'm gonna cheat and I'm gonna say a year from now, because I think 6 months from now we won't have any additional info on this guy. It's Chase Harley, 3rd round pick from this year. I know Bruce talked about him a little bit. Big power, but he's not, it's not unathletic. There's power and there's athleticism. For me, it's the fact that under this regime, which is now 10 drafts, this has been 10 years of drafting, they have never taken a prep corner bat this high. So, if you look at like top 3 round, they've taken, prep hitters, but they've been guys who play up the middle. Catcher, not any prep catchers, I take that back. But it's been, prep shortstops, prep center fielder, outfielders. Kellan Lindsay, Kendall George are the recent ones. And even college players, when they take guys pretty high, it's typically guys up the middle. You have a few exceptions with guys like Cody Hosey and Michael Bush. So for me,
Michael Bush is a second baseman, Justin. He was an up the middle guy. Don't you remember that?
I remember him getting announced as a second baseman for sure. So for me, I think the fact that they've never taken a prep cornerback this high, and in general, they don't take a ton of cornerbacks high in overall. That's a flag for me, and the fact that the power is super impressive. There's athleticism there. I don't remember where I saw this. I'm not trying to take credit for it. I saw like a Kobe Mayo comp who just got called up for the Orioles. That's like what this guy looks like if everything works out, where, big guy, a ton of power, playing third base. There just aren't a lot of prospects like him in the system, maybe like a Jake Geloff too. But I think Bruce mentioned he just turned 18. He's really young for the class. A year from now, so not 6 months. I don't know if we'll see his pro debut in the next 6 months, but a year from now, he might be a guy who's well into the top 15, around the top 10 of the system.
I like it. Bruce, we'll end with yours. Give me one name to watch kind of as a riser in the next 6 to 12 months.
So the guy that immediately comes to mind for me, you mentioned top 20. He's not even ranked top 20 right now. He's more ranked top 30 for me. I've been trying to get him into the top 30. I still will. It will be to be determined whether I can. But it's Arnal Lantigua, outfielder who's been in the Dominican Summer League the last 2 years. I think there's been a lot of highlight, and deservedly so, towards Emil Morales there on the circuit this year. He's torn the cover off the ball, but Arnal Lantigua has been right behind him doing the same thing. Lantigua didn't play a ton of games last year in the Dominican Summer League, but in the games that he did play, showed a lot of power, even though the batting average was low. And I think this guy is a dude that has a lot of power, and that's something to dream on. He's got enough athleticism where I think that there could be some upside defensively in the outfield as well. And just looking at his offensive profile, that's the main thing that I am excited about. He's got an OPS, I believe the last time I checked was somewhere around 950 in the Dominican Summer League this year. And he's a guy that once he gets stateside, I think he could wind up right along the same kind of track as we've already talked about Vargas, Quintero, Emil Morales. I think that once he gets stateside, if he continues to hit with power the same way that he has, he could start getting talked about in that name of this kind of rookie ball class of really, really talented hitters.
I love it. A deep cut there. Both those guys, a little bit deep cuts, not necessarily, kind of in the 25 to 30 plus range. So I like it. Hey, both you guys have been super generous with your time. This has been a lot of fun for me. I always learn reading or talking to you guys. So I appreciate it. First time talking to Bruce, but I've been reading your stuff from afar for a little while. So Justin, I'll start with you. I know you've got a new update out. So tell people where they can find your rankings and kind of your stuff.
Yeah. Pinned link on my Twitter page, also futuredodgers.com. See it either place. Midseason rankings, short player blurbs on each player that's ranked. Yeah.
Future Dodgers on Twitter or X as well. Bruce, I know you're at Dodgers Digest. You're at Just Baseball as well. So any other information on where people can find your stuff?
Yeah, everything that I do, I post on my Twitter, bnicholas7. You can see it on the screen there. So go give me a follow there. Another place that you can find me as kind of a hub for all of my content is my Substack. You can reach that at bnicholas.substack.com, spelled the same as you see on the screen, but without the 7. So yeah, the Twitter, Substack are the two places to find me. Check out Dodgers Digest. I post my articles there, and all of my colleagues there at Dodgers Digest do an awesome job as well. So check out the site, check out Just Baseball. And yeah, Jeff, thank you for having me on. This has been a lot of fun to just talk Dodger prospects. I'm glad that it went long because this has been a blast.
I love it. I love it. I'm glad to hear that. So you guys are both awesome. Please, everybody, check them out. This is sort of a niche in Dodgers baseball that I don't have the expertise in or the time to really dive in. So I lean a lot on people like Justin and Bruce who not only do a great job, but are focused on the Dodgers. Some of the national media, they're covering hundreds, if not thousands of these guys. So to have some people that cover the Dodgers and do a great job is awesome. So check Justin's stuff out, check Bruce's stuff out. And as Bruce said, his midseason update, it sounds like, will be on Dodgers Digest and Substack and Twitter in the next couple of weeks. So check that out. So again, thank you everybody for joining. If you're new to the channel, please go ahead, subscribe, ring the notification bell. We've got live content 5 or 6 nights a week on this. If I can point you to some specific videos, we did an interview with Eric Gagne last week that was a personal highlight of my own. If you haven't checked it out, go ahead. Some fun stories there about Barry Bonds, about the time he almost fought Michael Tucker, which is my personal favorite story. So some tidbits in there I didn't know. So I appreciate that. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. And of course, as always, go Dodgers.